Silicon Valley is just a very interesting place. The biggest thing about the Bay Area is like, it's kind of a long history, but it has all the ingredients that make life easier as an entrepreneur to basically start a company. And like, we can go and analyze all the different things, but main thing is, let's just say when we started off, like, I didn't know anything about startups, right? But what I did know is I knew lots of people who had done startups, lots of advice. You can talk to lots of people. You're always inspired by everybody in different ways that they do it, because people are always being very creative, and it's about pushing that boundary. Silicon Valley is like, technically can be defined as you got San Jose down here, Palo Alto where Stanford is, and up here San Francisco. So Palo Alto in between, there's Redwood City and then there's San Mateo.
실리콘밸리에서 스타트업들이 성공하는 이유 중에 하나는 투자가 있어요. 이 벤처 캐피탈 문화나 아니면 또 실리콘밸리에 돈 번 사람들이 또 엔젤 인베스터로 또 자기들이 번 그 부를 또 새롭게 사업 시작하는 사람들에게 또 투자를 또 하는 그런 문화. 그리고 또 하나는 워낙 테크 회사들이 많기 때문에 그런 아이디어를 갖고 있는 사람들 많이 이쪽으로 모일 수밖에 없고요. 뭐 구글, 애플, 야후, 페이스북, 트위터, 뭐 마이크로소프트를 제외하고 마이크로소프트, 아마존을 제외하고는 메이저 테크, 특히 인터넷 회사 다 여기 모여 있단 말이에요. 그러니까 여기 워낙 좋은 사람들도 많이 있고 개발자도 많이 있고 또 그러다 보니까 그쪽에 대해서 서로 얘기할 수 있는 기회도 많고 그러다 보면 새로운 아이디어도 많이 만들어지는 것 같고요. 그리고 세 번째는 스타트업, 엔트러프리어라는 사람들이 갖고 있는 사회적 지위가 굉장히 높아요. 그러니까 내가 뭐 어떤 대학을 나오건 뭐 배경이 어떻게 됐건 간에 꼭 구글에서 무슨 VP를 해야지만 성공한 사람으로 보거나 뭐 페이스북에 취직을 했다고 성공한 사람으로 보는 게 아니라 내가 갖고 있는 생각을 가지고 새로운 회사를 만들어서 그 엔트러프리어로 회사를 운영한다는 거에 대해서 사회적으로 보는 시각이 굉장히 높아요.
I'm from Michigan originally, where people are actually pretty conservative about work and about, starting new things. And I think in a place like Michigan and probably a lot of other places, people have the notion that if you start something and it fails, that's a major problem. That's like a black mark. That's terrible. You never want that to happen. And the assumption in San Francisco is that if you start something and it fails, that's awesome. Like, you learned something. In some ways, you're way out ahead of the people who haven't failed yet, because you've learned so much about what works and what doesn't work, and you can take the things that you've learned onto your next experiment, onto your next startup. So that's one of the things that I think is really remarkable and really surprises people. The notion that you could have a resume full of failures in San Francisco, and people would be really excited about that and really anxious to work with you. And in general, the assumption is that you're going to be trying new things. I think if you were somebody who just kind of settled in and worked at the same place for 20 years or 30 years in San Francisco, people would look at you and say, like, what's wrong with that guy?
It is kind of like your typical startup story. Like, I mean, and I started this company with my co-founder Lance Tokuda, and our background is we were developers and engineers. For a long time, right? So we've never kind of like run our own business, never done the business side of things, all that type of stuff. We're like, hey, social networking users, at the time we were looking at MySpace because that was the dominating social network. They really don't have any new features. Like the social networks weren't putting out things fast enough. And we're like, hey, let's put out new features and new functionality for social networks that all the users really want to use. And so the first thing that we put out was literally a flash slideshow. So we put it out there, and kept on changing the process and making users inflow make it a lot easier. And literally after a couple days, it just started to grow really, really fast. It was definitely one of the most insane times of my life. I guarantee that. We were growing so fast. Every server we were on, we blew it out. And like every time I came up with a new solution to basically fix that problem, we grew big enough within a day or two that I ran into another problem. And it was like I just didn't sleep. I really didn't sleep. And all of that because it was just the two of us. We didn't put together a business model or anything like that. So we were racking up lots of debt, lots of credit card debt, because we're just paying for servers and getting more servers and getting more servers, right? From raising money, like even if you're really, really good, like it takes, you know, a month to 2 months to kind of get money into the bank. And we were growing so fast, like we didn't even stay at the same hosting facility for more than a month.
What it's like working in a startup. It's not boring. There's always a lot to do. So it's been very busy, always on the move, but the most important part is trying to listen to the users and create a community around them, and then being able to make the best decisions, not necessarily not delivering what they want, but assessing what they need and being able to deliver something solid and something that they would find very useful and something that would provide value.
You would think usually when a company gets bigger, it gets slower, it gets more bureaucratic. Yeah, exactly. Everything slows down and decisions take longer. And I think so far Twitter has escaped that, even though it's almost 200 people now. I would say that working at Twitter, more than anything else, you realize the value of being able to experiment with things. Even though Twitter is a huge service with millions and millions and millions of users, not just users, but other sites and other services that use it as the basis for what they're offering to people. Even though it has that huge scale, people here move really, really quickly, and they're not afraid to try new things quickly. I mean, it's astounding to see the pace at which people will create a new feature, try it out, experiment with it, release it to employees, and then finally release it to the world. It's just amazing how quickly it moves. It's funny, the whole notion with Twitter is that it's a real-time information service. You see that reflected in the company. The company moves really, really fast, and that's the thing that surprised me the most.
Take risks. Don't be remotely afraid of taking risks. There's not a kind of like a history where like a lot of people actually just say, oh, I'm gonna just leave my job and I'm just gonna go and do this, and I'm just gonna hope that something happens. I want to have a kind of nice safety net. That's kind of like the biggest thing, I think, the first thing that you get past, because people who are just kind of like, they take risks and they're not scared of kind of like certain bare boundaries, they just have a higher chance of success, in every possible way. That's as far as a business, with meeting people and just kind of like just learning new things and kind of expanding yourself. It's probably the biggest thing that I would ever suggest, and it's a hard thing for me to do even today. And there's a lot more long-term kind of cultural impacts in Asia, right? When you like go and do a startup and you don't do well. I mean, I know all about that, right? Because with family and friends that are like, when I went to do it, a lot of them are like, why don't you just go join Google or something like that? But that's kind of like where the risk taking comes into play, right? Like, I believe, especially in places like that, like it's actually even better, right? Because you're the only person taking risks. You got a lot better chance of succeeding, I think, right? Because there's not going to be as much competition.
타겟 시장을 확실히 잡고 시작하시는 게 되게 중요한 것 같아요. 한국 시장만 놓고 볼 거냐, 아니면은 조금 글로벌하게 놓고 볼 거냐. 그러니까 장단점이 있단 말이에요. 글로벌하게 놓고 보면 당연히 시장 사이즈가 크죠. 시장 사이즈가 크기 때문에 잘 됐을 경우에 업사이드는 훨씬 더 크단 말이에요. 하지만은 글로벌 시장을 놓고 보면은, 그럼 결국 글로벌 시장 놓고 보면 미국에서 시작하는 경우가 대부분인데, 그러면은 경쟁이 굉장히 치열하단 말이에요. 그리고 미국 시장이나 이쪽을 이해를 못할 경우에는 어려움이 많단 말이에요. 반면에 한국 시장은 한국 엔트러프리너라는 가정하에 한국 엔트러프리너가 굉장히 잘하는 시장이고, 어떤 게 될지에 대해서도 더 인사이트가 많을 거란 말이에요. 하지만 또 그만큼 업사이드에는 한계가 있죠. 한국 시장이 작기 때문에. 한국 시장에서 성공한 서비스가 미국에 나와서는 안 돼요. 워낙 문화가 다르고 한국 시장에 특이한 특성들이 있기 때문에 한국에서 시작하면서 한국을 타겟을 하면서 미국도 같이 보고 이러면은 결국은 이도 저도 아닌 게 되더라고요.
If I had one word to people who wanted to start a company, it would be find the right collaborators. I think you can probably start something on your own and sort of bootstrap it and get it running. But there does seem to be this pattern where people in pairs or trios, usually with sort of complementary skills, that's the core it seems to take to really sort of get something going. And especially early on, when everything is uncertain and failure is more likely than success because the risks in all these things are so huge, I think if you're on your own, I just think it's really, really tough. And even as it gets larger, even as it gets beyond just a few people, as it gets to a small team, I think finding the right people to work with, people that you're like willing to spend all day and all night with for months and months and months, and people whose talents and values you really respect, is probably the most important thing. So choose your co-founders carefully. That's what I would say.
Yeah, start fast. Do it. Just do it. Just do it and do it, measure it, and then build upon it.